Welcome back. We continue our September Hope Over Violence series this evening with an exclusive look inside the Lansing Police Department's gun vault.
Yes, it was eye-opening, Sherry. I spoke with the city's police chief and an evidence technician about the types of weapons that officers are coming face to face with and what everyone at home can do to help fight gun violence.
To see all these locks locked, it was a bad night.
Zig Olds has been an evidence technician for the Lansing Police Department for 5 years now, and he sees and handles firearms on a daily basis. So far this year, LPD officers have seized more than 400 guns.
I came back to Lansing because I wanted to help the greater good. And come to find out, I get a job where I get to see the worst of the city. It's very depressing. But we feel as though we're doing something as we are taking them here as opposed to finding them out on the street. Once they're in our possession, they're not a harm to anybody.
As the years pass, Lansing Police Chief Ellery Sotheby says his department is seeing a consistent and concerning rise in guns being taken off the streets, including modified fully automatic weapons to manufactured 3D printed guns.
Our milestone was 100 guns in 1 year, and now we're taking off 300, 400, 500 guns a year off the streets. Those are illegal guns. So you can see that trend is very alarming. Not only are our officers encountering these guns, but we're taking more reports of stolen guns.
And he says legal gun owners are not as cautious with storage as they should be, meaning they're leaving firearms in unlocked vehicles, at work, or not storing and locking them up properly at home.
What we want to do is make sure that when you have those weapons, that they're secure and put in a safe place so they don't fall in the wrong hands.
Would that make a dent?
Absolutely, because there's 100 and almost 20 guns in the city of Lansing right now that are in the wrong hands because they weren't locked up and stored appropriately.
We've had to get creative because we're running out of space.
This is where LPD stores its collected firearms, the gun vault. This room houses the smaller ones. Each box has a gun inside.
These pink circles represent guns that are involved in homicides.
Others in this room were collected for a variety of reasons, including it was stolen, the owner was not allowed to have one, or the gun was not registered properly. And over in this vault...
These are your rifles. These could be hunting guns. These could be the military-looking assault rifles.
This room is also scarce on space. During his time with the LPD, Olds has pretty much seen it all when it comes to firearms. But lately...
The feeling I get are that the guns are meant to impress, to have an aggressive look, maybe a tactical or military look, something that you may not have to shoot to intimidate somebody, to show off.
But sadly, many of these guns are being fired, and it's a trend Lansing police are noticing with more younger people as well. The department is actively trying to change that and is seeing progress on several fronts, but it needs help.
It's law enforcement, it's the court system, it's probation, it's the schools, it's the clergy, it's the parents, it's everything that all has to come together for that common goal to keep our kids safe, to keep weapons out of their hands, to combat violence in general.
And the LPD recommends all legal gun owners have a gun lock and a gun safe, as well as make sure they know where their firearms are at all times. And keep in mind, we talked about this, advertising on social media that you have a gun or through gun stickers on your home or vehicle, for example. The chief says you could be laying out the welcome mat for gun thieves.
People pay attention to that, but it's very eye-opening going inside that gun vault.
Yes, it was very organized, but there were a lot.
That's what you said, scarce space.
Yes.
Wow. Thank you, Siobhan.
And for the past 3 weeks, we've told you powerful stories and shared in-depth interviews about fighting gun violence. And 6 News will finish up our deep dive into this issue this week. But for the next 2 days, we are working with sheriff's offices to give away free gun locks. The first is going on right now in Jackson, and that's where we find our own Sherry Jones, now live at the Jackson Police Department. Sherry, how's it going?
Hi, Kira. We have been out here at the Jackson Police Department for the last hour or so, and we've already given away about 13 of these cable gun locks. We have a table full, and they actually go 1 cable lock per car, and people are so appreciative. It's all part of our Hope Over Violence campaign, really doing our part in partnering with the Sheriff's Department and the Jackson Police Department to keep guns out of the hands of children and adults. I'm here with Director Elmer Hitt right now. Thank you so much for partnering with us. You know, people think maybe if they hide a gun, it definitely is secure, but that's not always the case.
Certainly not. The biggest thing about hiding a gun per se is a gun's never hidden, especially if you have children in the home. and not only children. I mean even adults. If a gun is not secured either in a safe of some type or a lockbox designed for a gun or a cable lock of this type, trigger locks, that gun is not safely hidden. And we've had tragedies in our own community where certainly a small child has gotten their hands on a firearm and tragedy has occurred. And no doubt about it, kids are curious individuals. We all know that. And no matter how well you think you may have a gun hidden, certainly you just can't predict those situations where someone might stumble upon it, including our children. So use these locks that are being given out today. If you don't have one, please follow up with us. I'm sure we could get you one, and take advantage of those safes and lock boxes that are out there as well.
Thank you very much for partnering with us. And again, Kiera, we've given out more than a dozen in an hour. We'll be here at the Jackson Police Department for the next hour. We have lots of gun locks to give away, one per car, and we hope to see you down here. Reporting live in Jackson, Sherry Jones, back to you.
Welcome back. 6 News is spending the month of September taking a deep dive into the issue of fighting gun violence. 6 News anchor Kiera Lake sat down with the mayors of Lansing and Jackson, Andy Shore and Daniel Mahoney, to discuss the problem of gun violence in mid-Michigan's biggest cities.
Well, Mayor Shore, Mayor Mahoney, thank you so much for joining us. Now, as the mayors of 2 of the biggest cities in our viewing area, how big of a problem would you say that the gun violence is in each of your towns, and where do you think you go about addressing it?
So in Jackson, I mean, public safety is probably one of the #1 issues that citizens talk about. And because Jackson's such a small community, anytime anything happens in the form of gun violence, it feels like it's always happening. It feels like a huge problem.
It's something that's on a lot of people's minds. When you, like Jackson, when you look at the data, you know, a lot of our numbers are down. Our homicides are down, are in half from the year before. Our violent crimes are down, but we had one very bad week a few weeks ago where we had three homicides. We had a mass shooting where 4 people got shot. That week, it didn't feel like it was getting any better. We have a 3-track attack on gun violence: prevention. And for us, we have vast parks programs. We provide funding to non-city programs that do things with kids and youth, get people out of poverty, build wealth, all of that. That's prevention. We have intervention, which are our violence interrupters, and then we have to solve the crimes. We have justice.
We're seeing more young kids get their hand on these guns. What do you think needs to be done? Is there another effort or a different avenue you think can be taken?
Keeping someone from traveling down that life of crime in the first place. So when I think about that, I think about like what can we do to further people's education so they can have access to better and higher paying jobs, so they don't have a reason to be stuck in that loop of the life of crime in the first place.
We've taken 80 illegal guns off the street just in the last 2 months. A vast majority of them are illegal.
And like you said, it involves parents, involves neighbors, community members. Where can they go to, if they're seeing a problem and they want to report it, what resources are available for them to report these things?
911,
yeah.
Most immediately, of course.
Right.
But I think that anybody who you feel most comfortable calling is who you should call, whether it be a council person, whether it be the police directly. The most important thing is to report it. Don't wait. You should be willing to speak up if you feel like there's an issue or a situation, because you literally could be saving somebody's life.
And this will continue to be an ongoing conversation, but I do appreciate you, Mayor Shore, Mayor Mahoney, for being here today and talking about this issue that I know is really important to the communities right now.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
Welcome back. 6 News is spending the month of September taking a look at the impact gun violence has across mid-Michigan. As you know, we report on these crimes, but we sometimes don't get to hear how this affects the victims' families. Well, tonight, Kiera Lake is here for you with the story of a mother whose daughter was shot and killed, and the resources that are out there to help cope with this type of trauma.
March 20th, 2021, LaShonda Walker got a call letting her know that her 25-year-old daughter, Krishana Walker, had been shot in Jackson.
We got there to the scene and she was laying on the ground, and it was a freak out moment, just screaming, and I need to be near her.
Her youngest of 5 children was shot in the chest
by a woman that she had yelled at over not wanting her to hit her car.
Krishana was rushed to the hospital and was in surgery for about an hour before a doctor came out to let her know that she didn't make it.
It's just heartbreaking. It's something that you don't get over. It's something that you carry with you differently every day. Some days I think about Krishana. We call her Muff. That was her nickname. I think about her and I laugh and I have good memories and good thoughts. Some days I wake up and it's very different. It might be sad or angry. You have a million emotions carrying with you forever.
She had support from family and friends, but that wasn't enough.
A part of you is gone forever and you'll never get it back.
So she got professional help. I spoke to Jane Bidwell, a clinical social worker, about the difference professional help can make.
It's really important to recognize when somebody has experienced gun violence or any kind of violence to understand that it fractures families, it fractures relationships, and it fractures our soul, and there is no get out of trauma free card.
Jan says you may have nightmares or intrusive thoughts, but you don't want to avoid your painful feelings.
Because grief is never terrorizing. Trauma is terrorizing.
She recommends getting a therapist on a website like Psychology Today and finding someone you are comfortable with who is grounded in mindfulness.
When the danger's gone, it's really important to come and be with your breath, which we know stimulates the part of our body that can rest and digest.
All things LaShonda was able to learn after finding her therapist on BetterHelp. She was finally getting some relief after living with fear and anxiety by journaling, decorating, or just watching a movie.
It was so refreshing to really own and identify those triggers, know that, they're not going to go away overnight.
But LaShonda says this is something no parent should have to go through. She hopes parents, her community, and young people heading down the wrong path learn from this.
Step into their adulthood. Step up into, maturity. Stepping up into the person who you want to be. You don't want to be that person all looking at somebody's child laying on the ground and you did nothing. I would feel awful. I could never live with myself like that.
If you need resources on how to deal with your trauma or you're looking for a way to help your child, you can visit WLNS.com. Here for you in Jackson, Kira Lake, 6 News.
Welcome back. 6 News is spending the month taking a closer look at the problem of gun violence. It's an issue that affects us all. Nate Salazar shows us how Lansing is trying to turn things around by working with people who are likely to pull the trigger.
Sound of gunfire, red and blue lights, and police tape. It's all too common in Lansing. In just the last 2 months, there's been more than 20 non-fatal shootings, and police say most of them are not random.
12 of those non-fatal shootings stemmed from 3 different incidents, and that's what really got our attention this summer. I'm not comfortable saying that our non-fatal shootings are not related to each other.
Cycles of violence happening in our backyards. Police respond to these shootings, but how can we prevent them? City officials say they are taking measures to tackle this issue with organizations like Advance Peace, which work with at-risk individuals directly.
We are identifying and recruiting individuals who are at the center of gun violence in our community. That actually means that they are actively carrying weapons and engaged in firearm violence.
The organization works with potential offenders in an 18-month fellowship, providing life skills training, behavioral therapy, and peaceful conflict resolution.
We've engaged 19. We believe in our city we might have close to 100 individuals who are eligible to be a part of the Peacekeeper Fellowship, individuals who are carrying guns and shooting at individuals. And that number seems to be growing week to week, month to month.
Another worrying statistic, half of the current fellows are 17 or younger. The program is focusing on the southwest parts of the city, where 18-year-old Makai Williams was killed in February. A 13 and 17-year-old were charged with murder in that case. Elam is noticing a pattern.
Southwest Lansing and youth who reside in that community are feuding with youth who live in other parts of the city. The goal is to expand the program and begin to engage with individuals that they're actually feuding with.
But when it comes to finding these at-risk individuals, the city has turned to religious leaders like Pastor Terrence J. King to use congregation as a means of observation.
Many of the families that are involved, whether they're involved on the side of the offender or the victim, are attending our churches or know someone who attends our church.
Pastor King is the chair of the Assembly of Lansing Pastors, a group that was formed in response to a rash of shootings back in 2021. Now they're a part of Lansing's Gun Violence Prevention Coalition to get to people that are just out of reach.
The congregants will come to this faith leader and share information that they may not be comfortable with sharing with anyone else. We can pull that together with places and organizations like Advance Peace.
Alongside worship, King is also in higher education. Many of the people involved in these shootings the same age as his students. He says there are faces behind these statistics, and by making the right connections, we could see less of those faces on the news.
These are tragic things that are happening that are impacting families very adversely. It's going to take time, it's going to take effort, it's going to take money, it's going to take resources, and it's going to take a huge commitment to do this.
Here for you in Lansing, Nate Salazar, 6 News.
And tonight in our final report of our Hope Over Violence series, we're focusing on gun safety and how effective and important gun locks are as a way to limit gun violence.
Keep the gun where she can't find it.
He thinks I don't know where it is.
She doesn't
I know.
Public service announcements like this one from Project Child Safe speak a clear message about gun safety. The group stresses 3 phrases: own it, respect it, secure it. And if gun owners don't do that, the unthinkable can happen. In fact, this month, a Howell mother and father's lives were changed forever when their 2-year-old got a hold of an unsecured gun that accidentally went off, killing him. 10 years ago, the Easter family from Jackson experienced the same life-altering tragedy when their 3-year-old got a hold of his father's gun and it accidentally went off, killing him. Days after that, Mark Easter purchased a gun safe as a way to protect his family and prevent something like this from ever happening again.
You know, when I went to pay for it, I knew that $100 for the safe that it cost me, you know, I could have prevented my sons from dying, and that will haunt me. That's a cross that I got to bear.
The Easter and Howell families are not alone in their grief. According to the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention, children and teens are more likely to die because of guns than car crashes, drug overdoses, and cancer. Experts from the University of Michigan say the numbers are alarming.
I would absolutely call it a public health crisis. Firearms are now the leading cause of death for children in the United States.
Statistics published by the Gun Violence Archive show the number of gun-related deaths and injuries of children ages 0 to 11 from 2018 to 2022 increased by nearly 50%. That percentage was even higher when reviewing teens ages 12 to 17. That increased by 79%.
The evidence is just so clear that if we are storing firearms in the home and on our property safely, that we can reduce risk of injury and death in kids by 75 to 80%.
Experts from Project Child Safe agree, saying hiding a gun does not make a home safe, and instead they urge parents to think about gun storage before they even purchase a gun.
Accidents with firearms can be prevented, and it really just starts with secure storage. And, it's something that everyone needs to think about. They should probably do a gun storage check on a regular basis.
Experts say safe storage of guns and gun violence prevention bills, like the one signed into law this spring by Governor Whitmer, can make a significant difference in saving lives. The new laws also lower the cost of firearm safety devices to ensure owners can safely store their guns, keeping them away from children and out of the hands of criminals.
Especially people who own many types of firearms, because they are hunters or target shooters, should look at something that can accommodate all those firearms.
Welcome back, everyone. 6 News is going to spend the month of September taking a deep dive into the issue of fighting gun violence. It's an issue that affects all of us, whether you own a gun or not, and whether you've been a victim of it or not. We're going to focus on solutions this month, and we'll start tonight with Project Safe Neighborhoods. It's an effort spearheaded by U.S. attorneys across the country. Sherry Jones sat down with Mark Totten to ask him more about the project, how it works, and how it's working.
Well, hello, Mr. Totten. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. You know, fighting gun violence is happening at all levels of government, and we really know what's happening here locally. But why don't we tell our viewers what's happening at the federal level?
Because our sentences are generally longer than the state sentences, we are laser focused on trying to go after those who are the drivers of violent crime. For us, that means 2 things. We are focused on people who are active shooters, people that we know are willing to pull triggers, and we'll use whatever tool we have to incapacitate them to help keep the community safe. And then second of all, we're also focused on those who are engaged in illegal arms trafficking. You know, one of the reasons we are facing a gun violence epidemic right now is because there are simply so many guns on the streets and in communities.
And one of the things that we talk about to address those things is something called the Project Safe Neighborhoods. So let's tell our viewers, what is it and is it working?
Yeah, so Project Safe Neighborhoods is the Department of Justice's department-wide, nationwide program for addressing violent crime. It's a data-driven approach where we are trying to focus on those people who are the drivers of violent crime. You can imagine if our goal is simply to pick up people who have illegal guns or perhaps are prohibited from possessing them, you could pick up 1,000 people and never touch the people who are actually willing to pull triggers and are causing the violence that we are seeing rising in our communities right now. And so we're focused on that group of people. If we have intelligence, working closely with local law enforcement. Here in Lansing, we work closely with the Violent Crime Initiative, collaboration between the Lansing Police Department, ATF, and the Michigan State Police, and they very much adopt this approach as well. You know, those people who fit that, fit those characteristics, those are prime targets for us to use our limited resources to try to reduce violence in our communities.
What do you say about the younger people who are willing to pull the trigger? That's something we really haven't seen before, but in the last couple of years, it's been on the rise.
Yeah, no, it's one of the most striking characteristics of the current phase of this gun violence epidemic that we are facing. We generally do not prosecute juveniles in the federal system, and so there are a lot of different partners. We're one of them that is focused on this crisis. But around every juvenile who pulls a trigger are a bunch of other people that are violating the law that we can affect.
As you can see, our initiative is called Hope Over Violence. What are your words of hope for our people at home that are watching this?
Ultimately, what we want to try to do is prevent these crimes from happening in the first place. What you're seeing all over the United States, and DOJ has been putting significant funding into these, are these community-based violence intervention programs. Lansing has one. It's called Advanced Peace. I've heard the mayor talk about it several times. These programs are really important. They're really meant to try to identify those people, especially young people, that are on the wrong path, that could go the wrong direction, and try to give them a real choice, to give them supports and everything they need to go in the right direction.
Well, U.S. Attorney Mark Totten, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Doolan, thank you so much for joining us today. Now, how big of a problem do you think gun violence is in mid-Michigan and across America, specifically right now?
Well, violent crime is certainly a big problem. I'm not sure that it's helpful to separate out guns as opposed to other tools or weapons or even hands and feet from violence. So we can certainly agree violent crime is an issue.
And Michigan just passed a bunch of laws that are actually designed to help fight gun violence, including universal background checks and red flag laws. Do you think those laws will help turn things around?
No, I really don't. In terms of background checks, most of the crime is committed with guns that are not acquired through the lawful process. In terms of people who are actually in prison right now for having committed gun crime, they didn't get their guns in a store for the most part, right? They didn't follow the law anyway. So, newsflash, criminals don't follow the law. So I don't think the background checks is going to help things in terms of making anybody safer. I really don't think red flag is going to make anybody safer. I think that's actually going to create a lot more dangerous situations for police and for the folks who have the red flag raised on them, because you're going to end up with a lot more high pressure interactions between police and citizens. And there's a due process problem with red flag laws that's a big problem, actually. So no, I really don't think that these laws are going to make anybody safer.
And do you feel like requiring gun locks or safes is a safe and responsible way to prevent misuse, or do you see it as an infringement on gun owners' rights?
The so-called gun culture in the United States over the past 30 years has really promoted using safes and gun locks on its own without any requirements. So if you go into any gun store nowadays, it's very different from back in the 1980s or 90s in terms of the number of safety security devices for guns that are being offered. It's become pretty much the norm for gun owners to lock up their guns when they're not in use, especially if they have kids in the house. But as far as the requirements of forcing somebody to lock up their guns, actually, the Michigan law is written in such a way that it's sort of an extra punishment for after a tragedy occurs. And I'm not sure that that's going to have any positive impact on actual numbers. I mean, we hope. There are very, very few kids actually who die in gun accidents. It's exceedingly rare. But we hope the number would be 0.
It is Monday, which means it's time for another interview in our series, Hope Over Violence.
It's an in-depth look that focuses on solutions when it comes to ending gun violence.
And earlier today, Kira Lake spoke with Ingham County Circuit Court Judge Rosemarie Aquilina about her plan to use the justice system to help keep the community safe.
Judge Aquilina, we appreciate you so much for being here. And you've been a judge for almost 20 years now, hearing from countless family members, specifically who have lost ones due to gun violence. That must be just one of the most heartbreaking parts of your job.
It really is, especially when I hear one mother telling the other mother, I'm sorry because today you lost a son, and one has a son in the ground and the other has a son going to prison. That is heartbreaking.
On the flip side, you're known as one of the tough, no-nonsense judges. And how frustrating is it for you to keep seeing cases like this over and over again?
It's really frustrating, especially when I know I can do something about it, the community can do something about it, and things are not being done the way I think they could be done. We have too many guns, too many violent acts, and there's an outcry for help, and I'm not sure things are getting done the way I would like to see them.
What are you seeing when it comes to the number of cases, like the type of weapons or even the ages of people committing this violence? Have you noticed any trends?
Absolutely. There's hardly a case that I have where there isn't a gun. But now I'm seeing everybody, doesn't matter the age, have not just one gun, but multiple guns, whole trunk loads of guns. And it doesn't matter the age, 13, 14, 15-year-olds have multiple guns. And they end up in front of me. Fortunately, oftentimes there's not a death, but there is some kind of harm.
You're mentioning what you're seeing firsthand, and our Hope Over Violence series is focusing on solutions to these problems that you're seeing. And you may have one. You'd like to establish a specialty weapons court. Now, could you talk about how that would work?
The weapons court will start with the juvenile program, and it will be a delayed sentence so that juveniles who are found with weapons who have not yet committed a heinous crime will really be deterred. There will be a rehabilitation, a retraining, and they'll get education. Maybe they'll have a medical reason that we need to get involved, or mental health reason, education reason. We'll get parents involved, and we'll really look at what's the underlying reason. Why is this happening? Why do they feel they need a gun? Are they being bullied? Is there a safety issue? And we're going to look at a holistic approach. Can we turn this around now before it becomes deadly? And we're hoping the recidivism goes down and safety goes up. I don't know how else we do this except to retrain people for safety and come together as a community and say no more guns. We're going to give you another chance before it's deadly. How many more people have to be maimed? How many more people do we have to lose in our community? We have to do something. We need the community to say to young people and to everybody, you matter, we care about you. And that's what this court will do.
Well, we appreciate you as always, Judge Aquilina. Thank you so much for visiting us today.
Thank you.